I'm going to bring in now Dave Crabill, who I work with quite often. He's the president of iHemp Michigan. And just as I asked Ashley what ITC does, a lot of people may not be familiar. I mean, I'm obviously very familiar. I work in the cannabis sector, at least covering it. And hemp is still part of the cannabis plant, but it's a whole lot different. So let's start with that. Explain exactly what hemp is, and then we'll kind of get into some of the other stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, industrial hemp's a commodity crop. At least it was back at the formation of our country. And it was used to make rope and canvas and oils for heating. The grain was used for animal feed. All those uses are available to us again, thanks to the 2018 or 2018 U.S. Farm Bill. So that crop is coming back slowly, but it's going to disrupt a lot of industries. So we've seen a little bit of pushback, Mike.
A little bit, indeed.
A little bit of pushback.
Well, when people think of it, there's still that confusion out there. I mean, for instance, CBD products come from hemp, and those are consumables, but they don't get you high. They work with the endocannabinoid system that's native to your bodies.
Yeah, and I brought some props. So when we're talking about, so I make this CBD salve. I grew an acre of CBD in 2019, and I still have distillate. I make some salve. People make gummies. There's a lot of different ways to ingest CBD, and our pets have an endocannabinoid system. So there's even pet gummies. So those are good ways to ingest the cannabinoids, but there's other things. Is that what you wanted? But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more.
Wait, there's more.
Dave. Yeah, go ahead.
Now, unfortunately, Mike, this bottle had a hole in it, but this is highway hemp vodka, which is they use a hemp mash, a hemp seed mash to make the vodka, and it's a really smooth vodka. So isn't that interesting? Our buddy Blaine makes this oil, hemp seed oil, by pressing hemp hearts. The hemp hearts you can buy in your grocery store. I didn't grab those. I have some in my cupboard. I put them on my oatmeal. But hemp hearts are the hemp seed with the shell removed, and that hemp seed is also a great grain to feed to animals, and we'll touch on that in a second. But those hemp hearts are pressed and made into an oil. And those hemp seeds are a great source of amino acids and protein. It's about 30% protein, and it has a perfect ratio of 3, 6, and 9 amino acids. So it's a superfood. So that is cool. So far we've talked about consuming hemp products, but let's talk about building with hemp products. How would that be? Wow. So this is a stalk of a plant, and unfortunately, the stalk was not retted, and what happens is you grow these, and they're generally a lot thinner than this, so they'll be more like like a pinky thin, and there'll be 1 million of them on an acre, and you cut them down, lay them, and they start to decompose, and it breaks this barrier between the outer fiber and the inner herd. And that's where the magic happens. So that outer fiber is a really strong fiber, and that's where they talk about hemp being stronger than steel. There's some composites that have been made out of that hemp fiber. Patagonia uses it for coats and jackets, and you can buy t-shirts made with the hemp fiber. But the really cool and the low-hanging fruit is making hempcrete. So this is actually just a mixture of that chopped up, the inner woody hemp herd, and agricultural lime and water. And it's been approved nationally by I believe it's the ICC, as a building code. It's in the residential code that you can use hempcrete, or this hemp lime mixture, as a insulation. And what's the magic in this is its thermal properties, and it acts as a heat and moisture sink and slowly releases. So you end up with like a stone wall structure, basically. But there's so many holes and pores in this that it absorbs the heat, or it absorbs excess humidity, and then slowly releases it, so that inside of the home is comfortable, and you don't have the mold and mildew problems that you would have with, for example, concrete is highly acidic. Everyone's dealt with mold and mildew on where you, like in your basement, where you have a concrete floor and a concrete block wall, and you get moisture in there, bad things are going to happen. This hemp herd is naturally antibiotic. That's one of the other miracles of this plant is, viruses and bacteria don't like to grow on it. So the military is looking at it for the fiber, actually, because if you were injured in a cotton shirt, let's say you're shot in the shoulder, Mike, let's hope that doesn't happen, right?
Well, so you never know with some of these people, but yeah, so far so good. But go ahead.
Ann Arbor's a rough neighborhood.
It's
I know.
a rough area,
So with the cotton, you could get, you're going to get infected. There's going to be infection. But if you have a hemp fabric on, it's naturally antibiotic, you're not going to get that same infection that you would with those cotton fibers in there. Let's see, what else do we have?
Well, you also should mention that hempcrete is, I can't know if we call it fireproof, but pretty darn close to being fireproof, right?
It is actually, they did the fire testing, and it was the only thing that scored a 0. Yeah, no, you can't. We could take a blowtorch to this and all day, and it would just turn it black. Yeah, it's not going to burn.
So then California people should be looking into hempcrete, right?
Oh, it's just amazing, and they thought initially when we started this madness, wasn't any processing available at all. And everyone thought fiber, that outer layer, was going to be the most valuable crop. And perhaps by weight or volume, I think it might be there, but there's not as many. We have to do so much more to it to get to the textile side. And we don't have textiles in the US right now. We're very limited. But there's a lot more of this hemp herd, and that's been the market that's really taken off, because it's also a great animal bedding. So, think of your chickens and your horses and such. They have a bedding that's, bless you, on the floor, and that has to be changed out regularly because it gets soiled. Well, this hemp is highly absorbent. This hemp herd is what's chopped in for animal bedding, and it's naturally antibacterial. So you don't have the mold and mildews and those problems that you do with wood chips per se, which would be a typical option for animal bedding. So yeah, it's been amazing. And let's not forget the frisbees. So hemp is a carbon sink. So an acre of hemp, I don't have the numbers memorized off the top of my head because I'm afraid I'd mess them up, but it absorbs a lot of carbon, more than an acre of trees would, because you have a lot of dense biomass in that acre. And so it becomes a sink for the carbon. When you chop up the hemp herd, make it fine, you can inject it into, you can make a pellet out of it with virgin polypropylene or recycled polypropylene and use it for injection molded. So these are 25% hemp fiber. It acts and works just like a regular frisbee. It's mostly plastic, but getting to the part of the industry where we need to fix things is we need the Safe Banking Act to pass. And if you go to hempsupporter.com, you'll see a place where you can take action and let Washington, D.C. know that this is a major issue, because industrial hemp is a legal commodity, but the banks don't see it that way yet. Currently, the banks want to charge $250 a month or so just for the privilege of opening a banking account. And I wanted to sell Frisbees with my bank, and they wanted to know how much THC was in the Frisbee. They needed a COA, a certificate of analysis, to know how much THC is in it, so of course I went elsewhere. But it's just been ridiculous, the obstacles that we're facing to get this industry launched, but it's going to be game changing when we get there.
Plus, and I know this because, disclaimer, I'm one of the hosts of the iHemp Hour every other Thursday, that's been airing now for a couple of years, I guess, right? Anyway, so yes. So I also know that many states are providing the hemp industry with support, Pennsylvania in particular. However, in Michigan, not so much, right?
Yeah, it's been a problem. So legislation was passed rather quickly. Gina Alessandro, unfortunately, is retired, but she worked with us, and we were able to grow initially under the pilot program for $100, and we went through the testing, and everything went good. We had about 700 growers, but it's been a perfect storm. So the market collapsed. So I could grab some distillate, but that a 1 liter container of distillate from my crop, my first liter, I sold for $4,000. Now it's worth around $300, for a liter. But the state wanted the industry to be self-funding, to support itself. And as you know, the government doesn't do things on the cheap. So when it comes to all the compliance and testing that's involved in growing industrial hemp, there's costs, not costs like the marijuana side. They're not that high, but we're trying to transition farmers from soybean and corn to adding some hemp and creating the supply chain. And the farmers are faced now, they'd have to spend $1,250 just for the privilege of growing hemp, with the great possibility that they'd have to destroy that crop and lose everything.
Well, why don't you explain why that would be? That people may not be aware of that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So industrial hemp is cannabis sativa, which is the same as marijuana, but it has less than 0.3% THC. So we grow the same crop, different genetic, and the fiber ones go 12 to 16 feet tall, and they're just spindly, mostly just stalk. The grain are short, and they have bushy tops with just the seed. And these crops are grown in Canada. It doesn't cost anything to grow in Canada. They have a vibrant industry. In fact, when you go to your grocery store and buy some hemp hearts, which I recommend you do, most likely they're going to be from Canada. If you go to downonthefarm.biz, you can buy some from Michigan. But the CBD side is highly regulated, and it falls back over onto the same compliance challenges are given to the grain and the fiber side, even though they're not going to be consumed in any way. If for whatever reason that plant gets stressed and those plants go over the 0.3% to 0.4%, they have to destroy their crop. They're given opportunities to retest for like another $250. If they go over 0.5% 2 years in a row, it's considered like a serious infraction. So there's all these added challenges and risks. That's why this organization, the Hemp Feed Coalition, is working on Hemp Exemption Act. So if you go to hempexemption.com, you can let Congress know that we need this, because the fiber and grain are the crops that should be simply commodity crops. There's no medicinal value. These are the grain, the seeds, and the fiber. That are super low in THC, and most countries and many states have certified seed where they know after years of testing that these aren't going to go hot. No one's going to have an impact of, from these in any way, shape, or form, especially if you're putting it into a wall or a frisbee. I mean, it's crazy. So those grain and fiber crops need to be set aside, and that's what we're working on getting that done in the 2023 Farm Bill.
And also, you would like to see the THC level raised to 1%. Explain why that would make a big difference.
Yeah, so that would eliminate a lot of risk for farmers, but there's more to it than that, and that's where it gets a little confusing. And even within the industry, we see a little bit of bickering, because you have to be careful if if you're manufacturing products on the CBD side, and this package here, one of the things that they get into is the total amount of THC that can be in this entire package. And then that limits, it just creates a lot more packaging, because now you're selling it in smaller packages, so there's a lot of math involved in this whole thing and how it's going. But if we can just get to the 1% on the crop, when the farmer grows it, if it's under 1%, it's not going to get anybody high. It's not going to be an impact at all on society, for the THC levels, and it eliminates a lot of risk, and it allows us to grow some genetics that will be more productive. So it's been a challenge.
Well, and the other thing that it can be done is remediation of really nasty soil. For instance, several years ago, I was aware that the city of Detroit was taking a serious look at this, because there's so many abandoned properties that have probably put all sorts of gunk into the soil. Now, that ended up not going anywhere, but I know in actually in the UP, I think, there's some experiments up there and around the mining area where they're using hemp to clean up the soil. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Dow Chemical has tens of thousands of acres up in the Upper Peninsula where they've mined, and they've abandoned the land, but they're still paying the EPA every year, from my understanding, a lot of money because of the damage that they've done to these lands. I would suggest fact checking me on that, but this is my understanding. And they're working with the Indian tribes, and we were working with Joe Teal up there to set up a process whereby we could start growing hemp. There's been some progress in that, but I haven't seen a lot of activity yet. I haven't heard of any processing facilities going out and up there. Basically what we need, so the processing for this commodity crop is for the fiber side, is separating the two fibers, this outer long fiber from the woody inner herd. And that's a decortication machine to set up a plant that would be commercially viable. Takes a couple $1 million to set up the facility. By the time you figure the building and the land and incidentals, you're probably looking at $5 million to get her done. And but then we could have farmers growing within a 100-mile radius, because you don't want a huge transportation cost, because this is a commodity product. We could grow tens of thousands of acres. I can see ultimately we'll have 3 to 5 processing facilities here in the state of Michigan. And because one of the issues, it's a chicken and the egg. So we've talked to some of the auto manufacturers, and there's a lot of manufacturing here in Michigan, and they have an interest in being more green, more sustainable, and using plant-based solutions, but they need huge quantities. So we can't produce huge quantities yet, so we can't help them, but we can't get there unless we can get some traction and start building out that infrastructure to be able to produce those quantities. and that's kind of where we're at. We need the reefer madness mentality to go away. People to understand that this crop is going to serve us, and we need to build that infrastructure to make that happen. But we need some hurdles to get out of the way, and that this Hemp Exemption Act is one of those things that will help that along the way, and the Safe Banking Act. If the federal government would just legalize and let us do whatever we want, I mean, that'd be great, but I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Okay, lots of challenges, but you do have an organization with folks, farmers that grow hemp. Why don't you talk about iHemp, Industrial Hemp Association of Michigan?
Yeah, iHemp Michigan was formed in late 2018 to educate, inform, and promote the research and development of industrial hemp. And we put on workshops and seminars and connect people with resources. We have a business directory for those active in the industrial hemp space. And you can join our association, be part of it, and support us for as little as $20 a year. You can receive a business membership with a link back to your business for only $100 a year, and set up with your social media links and all that kind of happy stuff. So we try and provide a lot of value back to our members and keep them informed. And a lot of us are on standby, just waiting for that opportunity, and you can see it happening. There was an oversupply of the CBD products, and then no one grew. And now, then there was contracts coming again, and it's just slowly working its way up on the CBD side. The grain and fiber side, there's a little progress. There's progress in about 7 states where they've have a lot more support than what we've experienced so far here in Michigan. And they're building out processing, and they have farmers growing, and they have a definite supply chain, providing some of these products for a healthier and better future.
All right, just before we close here, Dave, one more time, what's that website address where folks can find out more about iHemp?
iHempMichigan.com.